the last speaker left. And what you're looking for is the remedies, or how we can deal with these people. We know what they're doing, is bringing false claims against you. So what I've done is I have solutions of how we deal with them. And we've been dealing with them for a few years now. And there is no response from their end. There? Can you hear me? Okay. So what I'm going to start with is to... I hope this doesn't fall. Yeah, what I'm going to start with is just to show you the type of claims that they can bring against you, and so that you understand which ones you're dealing with, right? So I'm just going to go through the list. The first one is a civil claim, which simply means there must be some agreement, or you've caused somebody injury or loss unintentionally. Second one is a criminal complaint, which means you have committed a crime. And a crime by law has got 4 elements. And if any of the 4 elements is lacking, it's not a crime. So they cannot consider the case under that heading. But most people get tried for what they call offenses, which are not crime, under criminal statutes. So if you know what a crime is initially, then you cannot be tried, they cannot try a civil claim as a crime. For instance, if you park on the road in a double yellow line, it's not a crime. But they try those under criminal statutes, which is a breach of their own codices and rules. And the final one is the commercial charge. So those are the only 3 claims that anyone can bring against you. What they're using is the commercial charge disguised as a civil claim or a criminal claim. So everything they're doing is under commercial law. So if you follow the commercial rules, you'll always win your cases. We've had a few successes, but the point being that you need to settle your matters in private and don't let it get to court. By the time it gets to court, you've lost the case already. So if you can settle with your adversary before he gets to court, chances are you're going to win it. And in commerce, the best way to do is to, I mean, there's 4 responses you can have for any commercial claim. So the first 2 would be honorable, and the next 2 would be dishonorable. So if you act dishonorably in commerce, you're going to be found guilty. So everything in a county court, everything in a magistrate's court is all commerce, you see. So also, the last speaker talked about what are you going to do when they bring a claim against you and you have to go to court, you see. What they want you to do is to defend the case, you see. That's the mistake in commerce, because defense is military terms. They want to bring you under military jurisdiction. What you're supposed to do is to draft a counterclaim. So when you do a counterclaim, when they bring a claim against you, you draft a counterclaim and you don't mention any of the issues. It's like a fresh claim. And that's how you can always beat them. You see, that's how to do it. Now, also the most important thing is, because we've found out, I think some people here might know, that there is 2 crowns. So you need to know which crown you're dealing with and which crown is bringing the claim. Because every claimant has to be identified. And if the claimant is not identified, then it's a fictitious claimant. And the case vanishes at the beginning, you see. So when these so-called public authorities claim to bring a charge against you, what you need to identify is which queen do you represent. And this always, they always run away, whether it's the council or HMRC or even the police. They don't have a response for it because half of them don't know that there's 2 crowns. Now, the first queen is the old lady, call her lady. But anyway, she's what she is.
Grandmother.
Yeah, her. She's the queen, and her dad is the Queen Elizabeth II of the House of Windsor. And that's the woman who's supposed to defend the common law of the land, because we live on the land. We also have Her Majesty the Queen in right of England, which is the Crown Corporation, you see. So when they bring a claim against you, your first question is, who do you represent? Do you represent the Queen Elizabeth II of the House of Windsor, or do you represent Her Majesty the Queen in right of England, which is the Crown Corporation? Now if they cannot identify who they represent, the case finishes there, because that's how you're going to settle it. You don't have to go to court. And if they drag you to court, you can always say to the judge, the claimant has failed to identify who they represent. And the case has to finish on that basis. Because, I'd say, when you bring a claim, first thing you need to establish is your status. Because that's how they get you. Because most people go into court without knowing what their status is. They think they're defendants, or they think they're guilty before being proven guilty. So before you go to court, always understand that all these corporations can only bring claims against other corporations, you see, because there has to be what they call equality of status in law, which means a corporation cannot sue a living being. So they have to create a corporation in your name. That's where the birth certificate comes in, and they create it as a corporation, and they can send their claims to the corporation. But once you know the name is not you, then things get a lot easier. You might look like your name in all capitals or whichever way they style it, but if you understand that the corporation cannot bring a claim against a living being without agreement, then the claim is finished. So you always remember that. All their proceedings are what they call in rem, which is against the property. So the property could be your house, or your car, or anything else. If you don't have those, they'll use your body as the property in chattel. So they'll loan that around to make some money. But that's the entire game. That's what's going on. So you need to identify your status initially. Or the party that's bringing the claim has to identify themselves to you. Because if I claim you owe me money, then I have to say who I am. The second one is their capacity to bring the claim as well. So whoever's bringing the claim has to have the capacity, what they call leg, or legal standing. So if you have no legal standing to bring a claim, you cannot bring it into court. So when you go into court, instead of getting into the arguments where you're discussing the facts that you owe money or to the bank, your so-called defense or your counterclaim would be that they have no legal standing to bring the claim initially, and that's how you can kill your cases before they start. So it's always who's got the legal standing. The bank cannot take your house off you because they have no legal standing to bring the claim against you or to foreclose against you. Why? Because they've sold the note to somebody else, to a third party. Now the third party is the one who holds the legal right to bring the claim, you see. And they won't do it because they had it, the house conveyed unlawfully, because the mortgage is fraudulent from the beginning anyway, because the bank doesn't give you any money, the bank doesn't have any money. Put simply, what they do is this: you go to, if they had £1 today, and you go to the bank, and you want to borrow 100,000, what they make you do is sign a promissory note, and then they credit this in their account as a positive. So if they had £1 today, you sign a promissory note for 100,000, they credit that in their account, so now they have 100,001 pounds, and ask you to come back next week. When you come back next week, they're going to cut you a check from your own money and give it to you and say you have to pay us back this money. But all money is created by your signature. Without the signature, there is no money. But we won't get into mortgages today. What you're going to do is, I'll go briefly through how to deal with police, how to deal with the council, and how to deal with the courts. And these are straightforward yes or no answers that we put these public servants to task. So I'll start with the police. I've had a lot of experience with the police personally, so everything I do, I'm talking from my own personal experiences. And initially, when we began doing this years ago, we used to believe in civil law and common law, and we used to present those arguments, but you're never going to win on that ground. On the legal side, if you try to sue them using civil statutes, they're going to run games around you in their own courtrooms because they're all rigged. All the judges, I'd say the judge, who's not a judge really, is a priest. Then you have the cleric, who calls himself the clerk of the court. Then you have the prosecutor, who's a persecutor. And then you have the defense solicitor. All these four characters represent the same interest, which is the Queen in Right of England, which is the Crown Corporation. So even before getting into a case or dealing with the facts, you can identify that to the judge. Say you're unwilling to participate because everyone in here represents the same interest. So you don't get involved with them. I will start with what we call the base man, who are the base boys, who are the boys in black. Some people call them bacon boys, because those are the people who are sent out. They are the street team, if you will. So they're the ones who are going to convince you that they have authority over you, and they're going to take it to the fake court, and then you're going to be adjudicated, and then they're going to pass judgment. So it's like a Greek tragedy. It's a three-act play. Everything is a three-act play. So initially, the basemen will come and try and convince you they have authority over you. They're looking for something called pretensive joinder. And this could be, because they speak a different language. We speak sometimes English, they speak legalese, which is a perverted version of English. So whereas you might think you're saying one word, to you it means one thing, to them it means something else. So the less you speak to them, the better. The more you speak to them, the more chance you're going to create this pretensive joinder. And once they have the joinder, then they presume that you are a member of the corporation, and of the corporation rules, which they call legal statutes, apply to you. So what you need to understand is that those rules will apply to you if you're not a member of the Crown Corporation. That is why from birth you have to be made a member of the Crown Corporation, because your birth certificate has got Crown copyright on it, and it says it's not proof of ID. So as all your documents, your bank card says, if found, sent to the bank, not to you, because it doesn't belong to you. Everything with a copyright belongs to whoever has the copyright. So your birth certificate is Crown copyright, you see. But that's the game. All these characters work for the same corporation. So in order to avoid creating joinder initially with the Bacon Boys, you need to know, I mean, we can always stop it with one question, because all they have taken an oath for is to preserve the peace of the land that you live under. The land that you live under is called England and Wales. That is it. So all laws of the land are the laws of England and Wales. There's also the separate, that's the Queen presumably, but there's also the second Queen who is, marches the crown, and her domain is the United Kingdom of Great Britain, or the United Kingdom Corporation Limited. And that's who's doing business with you. Everything is commercial. So UK is United Kingdom Corporation Limited. That's who's running the business and who's running all the scam. Now, I'd say if you ever stopped by the Boys in Black, and either if you're walking down the street or if you're traveling on the public highways, the best thing to do is not create this pretensive joinder. Because when they stop you, first thing they say is, let me see your ID or your driver's license. Now when you show them this driver's license, it identifies you because it's a Crown Corporation ID, that you are part of the Crown Corporation. Therefore something called the presumption of agency comes in, and a presumption of employment as well. So now because you work for the corporation, you have to abide by the rules. You cannot park on a double yellow line, you cannot do this speed, you cannot do all this nonsense. But most people don't know that as soon as they show the ID, that identifies them as a member of the corporation. So they always ask you that first. If you don't have a driver's license, like the travelers do, they don't have a driver's license, but they still travel, you see. They're not members of the corporation. They don't have a government ID. They don't work for the government. The only people with government ID are people who work for the government. So you're trying to break this presumption, because everything they do is based on presumptions. It's not real law. It's called color of law or presumption of law. You have to abide by the true law of the land as well, of the land known as England and Wales, and not the laws of the seas, which are acts of parliament, which are maritime laws. So what I have here is the questions that we've been able to knock off the nonsense with. So the first question always is to identify whether the man or woman acting as a police constable is acting under their oath. So are you acting under your public oath of office? That's question number one. And most of them don't know that they're supposed to act under their oath of office. The oath of office specifies that the only role is as peacekeepers. They're not supposed to be bailiffs or tax collectors or whatever else they do out there. Their only role is to preserve the peace, or the Queen's peace as they call it, you see. So number one, are you acting according to your oath of office? And if he doesn't answer that, you just go back to it over and over again. If he says, yes, I am, that's good, then you move to the second question, which is, am I obliged to speak to you, Mr. Officer, or do I have an obligation to speak to you? Because an obligation is a duty. A duty is created when you work for the government, or you work for them. Then it's an obligation, you see. So if he says, yes, you have an obligation, but he's going to say no, because unless you breach the peace, you have no obligation to speak to him. Even if you did breach the peace, you still have an obligation, right? But the reason they want to speak to you is because you can say those words, that's going to create the joinder. So they're going to engage with another conversation, they won't answer the question. But you always come back to the question, am I obliged to speak to you? And the answer is no. In that case, goodbye and go your way. You see? If he says yes, you're obliged, then the next one is, have you observed me breach the peace? So now you're going to go to his job is to preserve the peace. Have you observed me breach the peace? The only reason the breaking points can stop you is for two reasons. There's a claim against you, which is a criminal complaint, or you breach the peace. Or somebody has seen you breach the peace and commit a criminal complaint. That's it. Apart from that, they're going beyond their powers. They're going what they call ultra-virus. So you always bring up and say you're acting beyond your powers, because their powers are discretionary, you see. Whereas duty, if you breach the peace, they have a duty to arrest you. Everything else they do is to do with powers. And powers are discretionary. They don't have to arrest you if they don't have to. But nowadays they're arresting people on target because they're working on target. So they're being sent out and say, I arrest 10 people today. So I don't care who I'm going to arrest 10 people to make my targets. But that's not peacekeeping. That's called policy enforcing. So they become policy enforcers more than peacekeepers. Yeah, so they're enforcing the policies, the rules, regulations, and policies of a private corporation. That's what they're doing. So now, the question is, am I obliged to speak to you? And the answer is no, you have no obligation. Have you observed me breach the peace? If you haven't breached the peace, he's got no duty to arrest you, you see. And then if he says, yes, he's observed you breach the peace, then the next question is, am I being detained? So you say yes or no. If it's yes, we'll carry on. If it's no, then goodbye. I'll see you. Have a nice day. If it's yes, you're being detained, then the next question is, by what authority and under what law are you detaining me? Because they act, they have two roles. They can either act as an officer, which is an ecclesiastical title, or they can act as a constable. Which one is it? Because the constable is under common law, the officer is under acts of parliament. Those are acts of parliament. They're not the laws of parliament, they're acts of parliament. Simply because an act requires the consent of a living man or woman for it to have the effect and force of law, period. No one can create, I mean the first maxim of law is this, no man can create a law to rule over another man. Everything is by consent. We cannot sit here and create some laws and go out there and force people to live by them. Well, that's what they're doing. They're saying it's law, it's not law, it's statutes. Every statute created requires your consent, you see. So if you don't consent to it, it doesn't apply to you. Second more important thing is, the corporation that creates the statutes, only their employees and agents, those statutes apply to them exclusively. So for instance, if they say they're going to arrest you under PACE section 2 or 8 or whatever else, it doesn't apply to you. PACE only applies to those officers because they need that in their work. When they break into people's houses, they have to have procedure. So those are their procedures, not yours, you see. The only thing for you is to preserve your peace. As long as you've caused no loss, injury, or damage to anyone, you haven't broken the law. The only law is this, cause no harm to man, as they call it, or property, you see. If you don't do that, you haven't broken the law. Everything else is agreement, and all law is agreement. So you have to agree to be under these statutes of a private corporation, right? So, am I being detained? If they say yes, under what law and by what authority am I being detained? If it's common law and it's oath, that's fine. If you mention the statutes, you inform them that the statute doesn't apply to me, it applies to you. Unless you can prove that a statute apply to a living man, they don't. Statutes apply to what they call corporate citizens only, you see. Now these charges that are being brought against you, a charge, by definition, can only be brought against a corporation, period. So you have to understand that every time they bring a charge against you, they're presuming that you're a corporation, or that you're representing that corporation, which is your birth certificate, or your driver's license, or all these certificates that they create. And just incidentally, before I carry on, you don't need a license to do anything, by the way. Yeah, you don't need a license to do anything. If you're competent, you're grown, okay, you have to understand that these characters can only license lawful activity, you see. They cannot give you a license to do something unlawful. So if the action is already lawful, why do I need a license to do it? Just do it. So you don't need a license for anything. That's a money-making thing. So.
Can I say though that it's all very well saying that, and I agree with 100% with what you're saying, but when you get pulled by a copper, I don't have a license, and they will arrest you.
Not necessarily, so, it depends what is. Not necessarily.
9 times out of 10 they will.
Exactly, because
it depends where you come from. A small northwestern town like where I come from, maybe they won't, but let's say London for example, you don't have to have a licence, because a driver, you know, probably what you say is, you know, we don't drive, because drive pertains to commercial, where we travel. Right. But if you don't have a driving licence, you will get pulled. You will get the blue lights behind you. They will pull us up.
Well, they'll pull you up. They'll pull everybody up. What they're doing is they're trying their luck. So whoever falls for it will fall for it. Most people will, because they're going to get you in pretensive joinder.
My point being is though, these days more and more, it will come down to aggressive force on their part.
It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to.
I know it doesn't have to, but it does. It does. So we have to be very careful how we.
The whole game is this. They're using language to confuse you. What they're using is, in one side, they're just using language, you see. So if they stop you and ask you, are you the driver? And you say yes, that is pretensive joinder, because driving is a commercial activity. Yeah. But that means only, as soon as you're a driver, then they have jurisdiction over you. And they'll pull you out of your car and if you refuse to come out, because you have identified yourself as doing commerce. And they run commerce, they run the roads for that reason, you see. However, if you identify yourself initially as a traveler, then they take 2 steps back and try again, you see.
Is that real? Does that happen? Because I've not tried this approach.
Let's do this. Can I do this, please? Can I do this? Can I just run through this quickly to the end, and then when we do a Q&A at the end?
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, go on.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I can speak now.
Go on.
I can? Right. I've just left.
Speak to.
Okay. I've just left after 20 years as a police constable. Okay. And the stuff that you've mentioned, and I am not saying in any way at all, and I'm not challenging you, that ignorance is a defence. But in training school, and as someone as pink and fluffy and, you know, oh yeah, rainbows and pink, you know, unicorns, that's how maybe. I wanted a lovely world for lovely people and to catch the baddies. But the way that you're talking about police officers, what did you call them? So bacon boys? Yeah.
Boys in black.
No, you said bacon.
Bacon boys in black.
Bacon boys in black. Okay. And I refer, so that's like a pig, yeah? I am a lovely, nice, happy, wonderful person. In all my 20 years,
Not person.
whatever, alive, human, in all those 20 years of being a copper bacon boy, did I ever try and use my power in a negative way? And I joined because I wanted to make the world a lovely place and catch the baddies and do all that sort of thing. Now, what you've said about stopping people, and again, ignorance not a defence, and I am not even saying for a second that that is justifiable.
Intimidation, though, is a massive.
Right, look at me. Do I look intimidating? I realise
No, but others do.
that there are others that take that on board and think, I've got that power, I've got this. But I kind of feel that we're balling coppers into this kind of bacon boy thing where there's got power issues and they're nasty and they want to do bad things.
Go to Israel to be trained.
Right.
The issue, let me just finish please, the issue massively I think is the training, because if you said to me, you can't pull somebody over, well that's what I was told. You know what, I can put my blue lights on, I can pull somebody over, I can ask them who they are. Now it's only later down the line, when I've looked into it and I've started listening to people like yourselves, that I have questioned that, and one of the reasons why I've left the police is that reason. But I think there's a lot of coppers out there, if you challenge them, have no clue what they're doing, and that isn't because they're out on a power trip. Some are, because you know what? Some are complete and utter total white. And I have worked with a lot of those people, sorry, but there are also some nice people who, I know you think I'm maybe a bit pink and fluffy, like me, who actually want to do a good job and do good things and have probably been given the wrong information. So when you challenge those people, bear in mind, you know what, maybe they're a little bit stupid and they haven't really taken on board what their training is. And I respect you totally and you've got some really good points. And I have never stopped anybody maliciously, I've never arrested anybody maliciously, I've been very victim orientated, but I do feel a little bit that the bacon boy thing
Right.
was a little bit
unfair. Right, I take your point,
a little bit unfair. There's some good ones, but most of them don't know what they're doing.
Right.
And I will totally accept that.
I take your point on board. What I'm saying is, can we carry on then?
Yeah.
We'll come back to the Q&A in a minute. What I want to say is this, I'm speaking from my own personal experience, right?
Yeah,
I've been arrested very many times over these issues, and I've never met one decent copper yet. Right? Not one.
Policewoman, not a police officer.
I'm a police, and I'm nice.
So that's my experience, and I'm not making it up. I have videos, and we've been doing this for a few years, and I'm saying I haven't met one who spoke to me on a man-to-man respectful way. Not a single one.
Where do you live? Where are you?
Leeds.
See, I was like Lincolnshire. Talk to people respectfully. I talk to people how I expect to be spoken to.
Well,
That's talking about the majority.
yeah. Well, the people I deal with, they're not like that. In any case, should we carry on then?
Yeah.
We'll come back to Q&A in a minute. Okay. So the next.
We'll have questions at the end. So no more
we'll have
questions till the end.
don't worry. We just have to rush through this. The next one is, if they cannot identify under what authority and by what law they're acting, then your best thing is to take the advice. When they arrest you, they tell you one thing. You have the right to remain silent. Why? Because anything you say will be used against you in a court of law. So the best thing to do is to exercise your right to silence. And you do that by saying, I have no comment, I do not wish to contract for your public services, and I do not consent. And leave it at that. Because everything requires your consent.
Correct.
Now, another point that is always important, if you don't want to ask the 5 questions, is just one, which is everything they do because they're supposed to preserve the peace under common law. The statement you can make is, the law does not require me to give you that information. And this could be anything. What's your name? There's no law that requires you, as a man or a woman minding your own business, to give anyone else your personal details. What's your name? The law does not require me to give you that information. Where are you going? The law does not require me to give you that information. And leave it at that. And that's easy enough if you don't have time to get into discussions with them. Okay? So that's how you deal with police. There is, I won't go into the warrants, because there's 2 warrants that they apply for. We leave those warrants alone. But speeding, we have, there's a speeding, I came across the police when they tried to fine a friend of mine for speeding. So they sent him a picture. He was at a traffic light, and it says in the documentation that he was traveling at 0 miles an hour. So that was a funny one. So over the years we've developed the letters, so if you get speeding ones where somebody takes a picture of your private conveyance and sends it to you, asking you for money, we have the solution for that, and it's always 3 questions. Number 1 is, can you identify whether your claim is civil or criminal? You see, because they're going to use criminal statutes to bring the claim over traffic, but it's a civil claim. You see, that's number 1. Second one, you always ask them for the insurance, and they never give you that. You see. Third one, you ask them for the injured party, and that way the case kind of dissolves away, because if there's no injured party, it's not a crime. Okay, so that's for speeding. 3 questions, and they're gone. And also, you have to understand about charge. When you talk about charge, every charge is commercial. So when the police charge you, it's the same as being charged in a restaurant or having taken a taxi. Every crime, or what they call an offense, is got a charge to it, you see. Real crimes are indictable. Indictable. So if you kill someone, you're going to be indicted on 1 count of murder. If you kill 2 people, it's 2 counts of murder. When you get charged, you have to understand it's a commercial term. Same as a service, that's a commercial term. A service requires offer and acceptance. So they have to make an offer and tell you what they're offering and what price they're offering it at, and then you have to agree to it. So it's offer and acceptance. If it's not done that way, then it's not true. The charge is a false charge. Now, when you see the term charge, always remember there's also 4 required elements for it to be a true charge. Number 1, there has to be a pre-existing account. Number 2, there has to be an obligation. That's why you always ask them, I'm obligated to speak to you. Number 3, for a charge, whoever's bringing the claim has to have the right of claim, and it has to be done in the right jurisdiction. So without in any one of those 4 elements, it's not a true charge. It's a false charge. So I'm saying when you're dealing with these things, as soon as you receive the charge, limited to adjudicating over matters that involve persons or legal persons or corporate persons is all to do with that kind of business. So first presumption you have to knock is this presumption that it's a court of public record, because it's not. If somebody brings you into court, always tell them that you require your case to be moved to a court of record, because if it's not recorded, your avenues of appeal are slightly shut down because there's no record of it. So that's number one presumption. It's a court of record. It's not. Number two is that it's a presumption of public service, that these characters in these buildings are giving you public service, that they're public servants and they're giving you public service. No, it's not. It's commerce. They're going there to get money off you or to take property off you. That's all they're there for. Okay? The third one is a presumption of public oath. So when you see the judge or somebody calling themselves a judge sitting up there, you're presuming that they're acting under their oath of office. But they're not acting under the oath of office. Because the oath of office does not allow them to do what they do in the magician's court, which is administrative work. It's not judicial. They have a judicial oath, and they have a oath of allegiance to the Queen to preserve the common law. That is it, you see. But they're not doing that. When they're acting in a magician's court, they're acting as an administrator or a clerk. That's all they're doing. So they're not acting under oath. So if you ever want to go to these places, always ask the judge, okay, fine, I'm going to come to this venue, but I wish to see your subscribed oath of office or verified copy of it. You're never going to see it. Okay? So if they don't have an oath, what authority or right do they have to sit on the Queen's bench? We've chased judges out of the court by asking them simple questions. Every time we go to court, they run away. We've been to court so many times, and we only have 3 questions. We say, before you proceed, we need to know 1, 2, 3 things. And they always go crazy. Yeah. And next thing you know, they take the paperwork and they're running away.
Is this before the hearing starts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Killing them.
So these things have to be established before the hearing starts. So when you get a summons, for instance, you're meant to file your paperwork 7 days before the hearing. That's the latest. If you do it 14 days or 21 days is ideal. Ideal 21 days. But if you're stuck for time, you need to file the paperwork.
So you do it in writing?
Yeah. Everything legal is required. All court work is that. The court is not the building. The court is the paperwork.
Just paper.
Yeah. So you have to understand that what you write is your court. That's what it is. That's the evidence. Everything you're counting on is on paper. So everything you do, always write it on paper and serve all interested parties. And always do it under the postal rule. But if you can serve people by hand, then that's good as well. But if you cannot do that, use the post office. Because the post office were the first courts ever. So the post office is a court, you see. So you put it under the common law, and you put it under the post office, you see. Yeah. So these are not, they're not acting under oath, because when they're doing administration work in the magician's court and sometimes in the county court, they're not acting under the official oath. So they're not judges, they're clerks. So as a clerk, they have no right, first of all, to impose any sentences on anyone. It's administering a trust in your birth certificate name or whichever one in your driver's license at that particular point. Right? Presumption of summons as well. You need to rebut their summons. When they send you an invitation, it's an invitation. Could you please come and do business in our, what do they call it?
Arena.
Sheep in dry dock. Yeah, in our arena. They call it a venue.
Yeah,
A venue for what? To create revenue. That's what it is. So they're not going to call it a trial. They're going to call it an event at our venue. That's how they do the magician's one. You see. So you need to rebut that as well. Presumption of summons. For instance, when the council sends you a summons, that's a breach of the doctrine of separation of powers in a democracy. The executive cannot send judicial summons because it's like a triangle. It's got three separate branches. You have the executive, judiciary, and the legislature. You see, and that is it. So the executive, being chief executive officer, is an executive of the government. They have no right to issue judicial summons and saying that they can summon you to court. They're going to do that. So you can kill it on that basis only. Before it gets to court, you ask the CEO, by what authority in a democracy do you have as an executive part of government to issue judicial summons? And they don't have it.
That's correct.
You see, so you kill it before it goes to court. So presumption of summons is killed from that point. They're breaching democracy. They have no authority to do it. But because all their actions are based on presumption, they'll carry on. Because everything is presumed. I'm going to write this summons, and if you show up, good. If you don't, good as well. So it's a marketing thing. It's like the pizza boys. They put pizzas in everyone's house, and some people call, some people don't. That's how they operate. So they're going to send summons to as many people as possible. Some people will pay for it, Some people challenge it. Some people ask for the money back for what they paid because they've been collecting taxes unlawfully for a few years. But that's another story. You can always claim your every tax you paid back today because we have enough information to prove that there's no statute that allows a council to issue a judicial summons. And we have information from MOJ as well that proves that. So, next one is presumption of custody. Right? When you go to language, you have to understand that in legal world, everything is about legal definitions. So what is custody? You see, a custodian is only responsible for property. They can put you in custody because they consider you to be ram, they consider you to be chattel or movable property, you see. So when somebody says to you, you're in custody, you need to challenge that and challenge the presumption of custody and let them know that you're a man or a woman, and for that reason you cannot be put in custody, you see. They need to bring another terminology. But when you accept these terms, when somebody calls you a dog and you don't say, hang on a second, I'm not a dog really, I'm a man or a woman, then they'll treat you like a dog. So if I say you're in custody and you remain silent, then the presumption carries on. Because everything they do is by presumption, is by implication as well. Okay? So, next one is a presumption of court of guardians. Now, because they consider everyone, either you're a lunatic, you're a child, or you're incompetent, they have a guardian over you. So when they bring you to these courts, they create a court of guardian. So they're going to presume guardianship over you. And they're going to rule whichever way they want, because they know everything and you don't. Okay? Next one is presumption of court of trustees. Because they're running a trust. The trust is your name. This, I can never pronounce this. That's the one. So that's the trust they're running.
That's what the charge of.
Yeah, they're charging that trust by making you the trustee.
Just being the beneficiary.
Exactly. You are the beneficiary of that trust, but you be made into a trustee, you see. So you need to challenge that and let them know that you're not a trustee of the account in the matter before the court. So that's the wording. If they ask you who you are, you tell them who you are. I'm the beneficiary of the account in the matter before the court. And now they start shaking. They don't like that very much. They start shaking and they're going to leave the court in a minute. Okay. Next one is presumption of agent and agency. This is what we were talking about earlier. When you get stopped and you show your agency card, then it's presumed you're part of the corporation, and then the rules and statutes of the corporation will apply to you or on you. Next one is presumption of incompetence. And this one comes in when you go into these venues with somebody called a solicitor to hold your hand because you don't know what the law is, and they're going to speak on your behalf because you're incompetent. Yes, that's 12. So those are 12 presumptions that the courts operate under. Now, you're meant to challenge each and every one of these presumptions. If you don't, they're going to carry on as though they have authority over you, but they don't have jurisdiction over you. Next one. Right, so the court is the last resort. Like I said before, what you're trying to do is you're trying to resolve your issues privately before it goes public, right? But if by any chance you end up in a court and you have to deal with these people, with a priest, there's some questions which help if you want to see them leave the court very quickly. As soon as you walk in, you're going to say that you are hereby convene a court of public record before anything else is said. And that spooks them, because they want a court of no record that you cannot refer back to. But if you convene a court of public record, at least there's a record of what was said and done on the day. That's number one. Second, you have to identify your status. For a magician's court, or an administrative court, right, your status is as the general executor of the account in the matter before the court, because it's in your name. All these people are acting on limited liability. You're the only one who's there full liability, you see, because all of them act for somebody else. The judge is acting for somebody else, so is the prosecutor, so is everyone else except you. You're the only sovereign, if you will. So the second point is to identify your status. So if they ask you your name, you don't know the name anyway, but if they ask you who you are, then that's who you are. You don't give any names. I'm the general executor of the account in the matter before the court. And we've done it a few times, and they go crazy, and they try and say, I don't know what you're talking about, but you have to know what you're talking about, and you stand your ground, because all they use is deception and smoke and mirrors, but you never get a straight answer from these characters.
Does it work in court, this?
Yes, because I've been doing it, I was there.
This is like the Dean Clifford school. Lee was using it years ago, but this does work in court, does it?
Oh, it does. If you want to get rid of them,
I'll testify I was there.
if you want to get rid of them,
The first one to go is Cato Dyer's site, and he did it in a Canadian court.
however, what you need though, when you're doing this stuff, you need witnesses. Because if you're there by yourself, if you're there by yourself, and there's 9 of them, who are bar guild people, they worked every day together for years, they know each other, and you're coming in by yourself, you're going to get screwed. So you always take witnesses with you to see what you've done, and if possible, take a camera in there and record it as well, for your own defense, right? So what we do every time we go to court, we record them, and we ask them these questions, and we see how they react.
It works.
They run away. Put it like that. Okay? So, recognition as well. So you have to either recognize the judge or don't recognize the judge. Okay? Recognize the contract, you see. So what you do is this. Before you put your paperwork in, before you go into court, you ask to see the subscribed oath of office of whichever man or woman will be acting as a judge in the day. If they don't produce it, right, that's what you're going to stand on now. Because I said, I asked for this 21 days ago, I haven't received it, so I don't recognize you as a judge. And then he's finished. Because you're not contracting with him anymore. Because he's a public servant. He's claiming to be a judge, but he has no proof that he's a judge. Why? Because he's not acting on his oath. And he's not going to produce his oath.
Yeah. I was actually watching Trey Gowdy last week, and on a video in the Senate, and someone tried to butt in, and he's like, I don't recognise you, I don't recognise you.
Yeah, that's how you do it. So if they don't haven't proven who they are, you don't recognize them. So the legalese, the recognize that we talk about is not the recognize that they talk about. Their recognition is recognizance, which is a contract. Yeah. So what you're saying is you're not contracting with them. Why? Because they haven't produced the oath of office. So for that reason, you don't want to contract with someone who you don't know who they are.
Because they're a stranger.
Exactly. Yeah.
In my experience, though, I've only been in court with British Gas. Now, I've always played them with their rules. And if I went into court with British Gas and said, well, I don't see you, and I don't see you, and I don't see you, they would just order that warrant against me.
Right.
So it's horses for
the point is don't get that far.
I'm asking. I know.
The point is to resolve the issue with British Gas before it gets...
When you get letters through your door, you can't not go to court.
No, I'm saying before it gets to court, they will have written to you at least 3 times, saying they're going to take it to court.
Sometimes they don't. They're sneaky, British Gas. They wrote to me once. They wrote to me as a named woman and an occupier.
Right.
So I wrote back and said, what do you mean by this? Who is this named woman and who is the owner-occupier? Because I'm the owner-occupier and evidently you don't know who it is.
All I want to say is, if you can not go to court and do this, if you can get that way, but I've always had to go to court. So if I'm in court, stood there, will this work for me? That's why I said to you.
What I'm saying is, if you've done the pre-work, look, what I mean is this: if you've done, if they brought the claim against you, and you wrote the counterclaim, and when you're doing the counterclaim, you also ask the court for the judge's oath. You could also ask the Secretary of State for the judge's oath. If they don't produce the oath, then on the day you don't even go into court.
You're not arguing that because they've got no one and they've got
you
no
see,
authority to issue.
There is no case because you're going to go. You won't get into the court. You're going to deal with this with the even at the desk or with the usher.
That's fair enough. But we heard Sarge earlier saying that he kind of did all this, but he went away, and the police still came round with a lump hammer, trying to kick his locks in. You know,
I can't really.
Yeah. It's such a grey area.
Whoa! We're listening to a speaker.
I don't know about his individual case, but the point is this: by law, you cannot use the courts to settle a dispute that can be settled privately. That's it. It's called abuse of process. Now, if you've been honourable with British Gas all the way through, they cannot take you to court. What I'm saying is, by the time you get to court, you missed something somewhere, and you didn't do something somewhere.
Yeah, that's right.
But if you do the process properly, and you say to them, listen, I'm willing to settle with you, a condition to accept to pay you, he's got no right to take you to court. Exactly. Because when you take it to court, you're going to say to the judge, I accepted to pay them. Why am I here? I've agreed to pay them. There is no dispute.
And it's in the paperwork that you've already sent to the court in under the system. So the judge will already know if he's seen it, if it's said properly.
Yeah.
He'll already know this. He should already know that if you put it in advance.
Yeah. So those three questions to start with, and that should get rid of the judge. But if you're still there and he's asking you about your name, you repeat you're the general executive of the account in the matter before the court, and then you ask them upon your oath what's your name, and that's where the trouble begins. They won't want to deal with you as a man. They'll tell you they're a judge or something. Okay. Yeah, rest through this quickly. Are you acting in your private or public capacity? Same as the police, they have two capacities. The judges, they can act privately or publicly. When they're acting publicly, they're enforcing public statutes. When they're acting privately, they're doing this other shady business. So you need to identify whether he's acting publicly or privately before you make any comment. Because if he's acting privately, he requires a bond, you see. All corporations and all corporate employees require a personal bond to conduct a summary process.
Correct.
All these fake hearings are summary processes. If they don't have that bond, they cannot perform a summary process. That is it. So are you acting privately or publicly, Your Honor? Or do you have the authority to perform a summary process? They don't have it, right? And then, if he's going to do it publicly, you ask him if he's indemnified by the Lord Chancellor according to the Courts Act of 2003. Because anyone who sits on that bench requires indemnification. So this is stuff you ask before you go into the court. So by the time you say to the judge, I don't recognize you, they failed to give you the information you needed in order for you to participate effectively in the so-called proceedings. So that's the thing. You need to be one step ahead of them all the time. That's how you get rid of these idiots. What else are you going to do? Only 10 minutes. I have other information about solicitors, how to deal with them. You have to understand a solicitor, that's the worst guy you could ever engage. Yeah. Because a solicitor is demonstrate that you're incompetent, you see. But we have a whole bunch of questions that we use to get rid of solicitors. A simple question. For instance, if you tell the solicitor to inform all interested parties that you are not a nom de guerre, or you're not the mister, or you're not this fictitious corporation whose name is styled in all capitals, they won't get into that part. If you ask a solicitor to identify the jurisdiction of the court, they will not get that far because they get disbarred. They're not allowed to question jurisdiction, you see. So solicitor is a dangerous guy, but what we do have, I'm going to wrap up quickly so we can have some questions, but what we do have is questions and answers out to solicitors, counsels, anyone bringing a claim or a charge against you because it's commercial, so you know how to deal with it commercially. And that's the best way to do it. It's conditionally accept everything they bring. Do not defend, because when you defend,
you're a trustee. Yeah,
you're a trustee to start with, but you're bringing the implication of the military rule, because you're under military occupation right now. All these orders, defense, commands, attacks are military language. So you don't want to get into that. You want to be honorable, which is I conditionally accept anything you're saying upon proof of who you represent. And if they cannot produce it, you write a statement before you go into court saying the claimant has not identified who they represent. I believe the claimant is a fictitious claimant. So that's the entire argument. You won't get into, oh, British Gas, out of the money, none of that stuff. The fictitious is a fictitious claimant, they're in contempt of court. And then you change it all over. Now you're dealing with contempt of court against them. And all that. Okay? So I'll take some questions quickly.
He'll be king.
So you say is, rather than be the defendant,
That's trustee.
your next move is to be the claimant then?
Yes, that's why you do a counter-claim. You see, it's not called a defense. When somebody brings a claim against you, what you do is you draft a counter-claim. And that's it. It's not a defense.
See, where I am now is, British Gas won't touch me. They won't. They'll issue these warrants for application, these applications for warrants of entry.
Yeah.
I go to court and it's been withdrawn before it's even got there. So, that's what we're thinking now. Our next.
Now, if the
we're putting a boxing match. You know, we're taking the blows now. We want to give the blows back.
If you want to give blows back, remember everything is commerce. So the only thing they don't want to give away is money. So every time they take you to court, you have to claim your costs and expenses. You see. So every time they make you go to court and lose a day's work, you need to send them an invoice, and they'll leave you alone. So it depends how much you value your time. If you prepare to go to court and they don't show up, you've wasted a whole day, maybe a whole week preparing for it. You write an invoice and you give it to them. And by law they have to pay, because the same way you can send them a bill, it's the same thing they're doing to you. You can do the same thing. You can create some bills and send out to people.
An invoice isn't a bill, that's where we come from.
Oh, sorry, invoice.
Yeah, so a bill of exchange, they're only
promissory
paying for a
notes.
bill.
Yeah, you need to send invoices to these people, you see, and say this is how much you owe me.
See, I've not done any of that, and
Yeah.
I'm not, for a minute, I'm not poo-pooing anything you're saying. I'm not really not. It's just, does it really work in the real world?
Yes, because I've been there.
What I'm saying to you is, I've done this from my own personal experience. I'm not talking theories here.
I'd say that an emphatic yes.
I'm talking about things that we do every day. It's not something that's new. What I'm saying to you, everything is commerce. If you're dishonorable in commerce, you'll always be found guilty.
Yes.
If you're honorable in commerce, they're going to touch you.
Correct.
And that's it. That's the end of it. So as long as you do your paperwork properly, most of the times you won't end up in court because there is no injured party. You see?
Correct. There isn't. There isn't.
There's
no crime.
They always,
Correct. Which means they can't do it.
No crime been committed.
they always send us statements, not invoices.
Exactly.
Correct.
The statements is when you get your bank statement, for instance, and it says you have £100,000 in the bank. Do you go and pay £100,000 to the bank? No.
No, it's not part
It's just showing you that this is what's there.
The council tax is a statement.
Because
No, it's
everything is a
demand.
statement.
Demand.
Sorry.
Well, a demand cannot be made if there's a prior arrangement between us that I failed to fulfill, when you can make your demands, you see. But you cannot make a demand. Council tax council tax, do you know this by now, that what the council are doing is this? They're going to the courts and hiring a room by themselves, which is separate. So all these summons are not issued by the court, they're issued by the council.
Yes.
But council is simple. Well, what authority do you, as the executive branch of government, have to issue judicial summons? And they're finished, and give me the answer within 14 days, otherwise I'll consider that you've withdrawn your claim. After 14 days you don't have an answer, you write to them back and say, thank you very much for withdrawing your claim. Done.
Where can we get, I think the
Central resource, that's what I was going to say. Do you have a central place where your information resources are? So we can read at leisure and digest and...
Yeah,
we have a whole bunch of information. What we have now is this thing.
Online. It's over.
Right. What I can say is, he's going to be at the next meeting where he's going to have a lot longer to talk and you can ask all the questions there and
That's
then.
the question I was asking.
Yeah. In the meantime, we have this book called The Private Government and How to Deal with It. And this one shows that everything has been privatized, okay? So the reason why the gas can charge you whatever they feel like, electricity, what they feel like, because these are private companies.
Correct.
And the government has no interest. It cannot influence the activities of private companies. So what we put together is, I have most of the companies that have been privatized, from utilities all the way to nuclear is private as well.
Yeah.
So the government doesn't own anything.
Where can we get this information?
Come to the next meeting.
Well, yeah. Next meeting, if you want the books, then we can arrange for you to get it's a big chunky thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, couldn't you produce a book and I'd happily pay for it?
Yeah, I will.
Right. What we'll do is, if you want books, I'll take your details, or at least mark you down, and I can print them out. So when you come back next week, I'll have copies for you.
Next month.
Next year, January next year.
January. Yeah, because we live in Leeds, you see. So these are. Yeah. So all I have to do is.
Doesn't relate back to you.
Good information you want to read and you want to digest.
Yeah, I'll speak in a minute. Any other questions?
I just want to say, there's so much information, and what you're saying, you need to follow step-by-step procedure.
Yeah.
I think the only way to feel confident would be to have the information available to me, to read it, digest it, even have that in my car or wherever, so I actually knew what to do. Have me stop that and read it. So that's what I would need to be confident to do that, otherwise I wouldn't feel confident to actually.
Yeah, of course.
You're potentially a bestseller going on here, you know. You better.
Yeah, but that's a good one anyway. So. The Private Government is a good book. It's going to have all this information in there. What we're going to do is, when we finish, we'll get numbers and everything. So we'll keep in touch and we'll print one up for you, and you can have it.
I'll pay you. I'm happy to pay you. I don't mind paying.
Yeah, I mean, someone has to pay for all this paper.
Administration, isn't it?
Any other questions? No? Well, thanks everyone for coming out.
TV, in association with GetOutOfDebtFree.org.